Greetings from the mystical realm of Paranormal M. Join us on an exploration of the unexplained and the mysterious. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications to stay connected to our latest gripping stories. We hope you're ready for an unforgettable journey. Story number 1. Don't turn around. About a year ago, my father was working on an old run-down house that was located. It was on his work property. His former boss wanted to turn the house into a storage building for his company's roofing supplies. One day, my father was asked by his boss to work on the house by himself. So my dad, to feel less lonely, brought our dog Ruger with him. Ruger was a German shepherd that we received from a dog shelter a few months prior from this event. Anyways, as my father was working on the first floor of the 3-story house, Ruger was pacing back and forth in front of the basement door. My dad, of course, didn't seem to really think that was a problem, until Ruger started to run up and down the stairs to the second floor, then come back to the basement door. He believed Ruger needed to use the restroom, so we took him out, and that was the end of it for a while. A few hours later, Ruger and my father came back from lunch, and Ruger went straight to the basement door and laid in front of it. A few minutes later, Ruger started to throw a barking fit. My father went to the door, opened it, seeing what he was barking at. My father didn't see anything and tried to show Ruger, but the dog wouldn't even step a foot closer to the door. My father then decided to go down into the basement to see what was there. He initially didn't find anything, so he started going back up the stairs. At this point, Ruger was sitting quiet on the top of the stairs looking down on my father. My father was halfway up the stairs when suddenly Ruger went off and started to whimper, bark. My father had the sudden urge to look behind him, and it sort of scared him. There was a black shadow crawling at a fast speed up the stairs towards my father. My father said he never ran so fast in his life getting up the stairs and away from the thing that was after him. He slammed the door behind him and nailed it shut. He has no clue what it was, but my father swore that the thing was determined to get him. A few weeks later, sadly, Ruger died on the highway next to the house that haunts my father. My father watched his best friend die by a car hitting him. He hasn't gone back to the house because he no longer works for the company, but he says he wouldn't step foot into that place ever again. I think I lived in a haunted house. On September of 2017, I, a 25-year-old female, moved into one side of a 110-year-old duplex. The other side was unoccupied. This was with my friend. Let's call him Kyle, and his wife, we'll call her Jane. They settled in a couple of days before I did, allowing them to move furniture in and have a lot of things ready before I got there. The night I moved in, Jane went to bed with the dog, and my friend Kyle and I stayed up catching up on our lives and whatnot, when we heard what sounded like a hard knocking on the ceiling above us. This would have been where Jane was asleep. Boom, 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 boom. Kyle went upstairs to check on Jane, who was still fast asleep with the dog. Weird. We continued chatting and having fun when we again heard noises coming from the upstairs. This time it sounded like footsteps walking from one side of the house to the other. We both brushed it off a little bit and thought maybe a possible haunting was still in the back of our minds, though. I'm not going to bore you with the lesser things I witnessed, like lights flickering, knocks on my door, a shadow breezing horizontally past my door, even though my hallway doesn't allow for that kind of movement. So let's just say a month later, my friend Rachel comes over. We were new friends. We were finding out about one another, and we played music and wanted to jam out in my new house. We were in my basement late at night, just playing music and talking. Rachel was sharing about her faith with me. She's a Christian. I grew up Pentecostal Christian, but not interested anymore. She had just said Jesus' name when we both heard what sounded like maybe a 2-second clip of children's laughter, with some sort of background noise coming from the staircase going upstairs. My heart immediately dropped. For both of our sakes, I rushed upstairs just to make sure my roommate Kyle wasn't fucking with us. And sure enough, he was asleep upstairs. I go back downstairs and Rachel and I continue on like normal, when not too much longer after, we hear yet another sound of laughter, this time sounding like an adult woman, and it was mocking in nature. I run upstairs and sit on the couch, putting my head between my legs because, what the fuck, right? Rachel says a prayer for the both of us and goes home. It's like 3 a.m. at this point. Terrified, I go upstairs to my room and I see Kyle headed toward the bathroom. I told him everything that just happened. He tells me not to worry. Then we both heard the noise of a crinkling grocery bag from downstairs. Then it sounded like something fell over. We are both frozen at the top of the stairs. I assure him Rachel left and I locked both entries of the house. Jane wakes up and comes out of their room and tells us we're both idiots and there's no one here. Sure enough, she goes downstairs and there's no human there. After this night, I grew very paranoid. I always felt I was being watched, especially in the kitchen and in my bedroom. There was no hiding from it. I stayed up late at night unable to sleep. I didn't eat because I couldn't go into my kitchen. I wrote about what I thought, or maybe hallucinations, in my journal. I wrote songs about it, too. Anything to try to get something out of it, or just to get some of it out. I started self-harming again. I started using opiates after 3 years of being opiate-free. Kyle and I did this together. I don't think we could handle the spirits and the emotional turmoil that they were bringing. So another night I'm with Rachel again. This time she and I had just arrived at my house and we were sitting in the staircase petting the dog. She was waiting for Kyle to be done in the restroom so she could use it. We heard a man's laughter coming from Kyle's office. We noped right out of there, went to her place, and I prayed. And I don't pray. I don't really think it works. But I have had experiences at church to make me believe it does sometimes. I always thought it was odd that I never heard the laughter when Rachel wasn't with me, but was so thankful that I didn't question it too much. The third and final occasion, Rachel and I were in the basement with a friend, another Christian, playing music together. I felt safe with Rachel with me, so I would go to the basement only when she was with me. This time, while we were all sitting down there together, we all heard the laughter again, but muffled and sounding like it was directly above us upstairs. It was all so much I ended up taking refuge at another friend's apartment for the remainder of my lease, in hopes to escape what awful spirits were in that house. I haven't lived there in 2 years, but I found this subreddit and I would love to hear any thoughts. Weird stuff happening in my house. So just a small backstory. I've seen shadow people all of my life. As long as I can remember, and even if I couldn't see it, I could sense a presence. It didn't do anything to me that frequently, but still reminded me of its presence often enough. Normal stuff would happen, like an alarm clock randomly playing music while I was home alone. That happened 2 times. Agitated animals and seeing a black figure walking by out of the corner of my eye. When I moved across state from my dad's house to my mom's house, my dad told me about some weird stuff with the TV and his belongings being moved, but nothing would be missing while he was at work. During this transitioning period, I had no problems. A few months after, when problems at my dad's house stopped, while doing dishes, I could see a reflection in the tiled wall behind the sink. It looked like someone was walking by when no one was there. That was the only thing I experienced at my mom's house until not long after my boyfriend moved in with me and my family in October. One night we were trying to sleep, and I hear 3 loud slaps on a chair or a stool. No other noise could have made it, and it seemed like it really wanted us to know that it was there. After a few days, I start to forget about the incident. Same situation. Trying to sleep, and then something, I think it was a lotion or perfume bottle, flew across the room and hit the door. Over the next few months, random small things that can be brushed off like a 2-liter falling over for no reason or hearing footsteps happened periodically. I never told my mom this because she doesn't believe in this kind of stuff, so I was really shocked when she told me what my younger brother and stepdad saw. During the night, my brother got up for whatever reason and saw a man in the house, and followed him into the laundry room and found that nothing was in there. And then about a week later, my stepdad said something similar. Just a different part of the house. It happened to him, and he's not the kind of person to lie about this stuff. Either because he's pretty skeptical about this stuff like my mom. My brother, well, he's got mental disabilities and wouldn't make something like this up, let's just say. I'm wondering if maybe an entity is following me, because when this was happening at my dad's house, I lived there. Nothing happened at my mom's house, and vice versa. I was watched by a shade. I've only had sleep paralysis once in my life, and it was terrifying. I had woken up from a deep sleep and was completely aware of everything. I could feel the blanket laying on me and the exact position I was laying in. What scared me was the presence I felt hanging over me at the foot of the bed. It was heavy and dark. I was panicking, trying my hardest to move. I kept thinking, I need to move, over and over, and I passed out. I didn't immediately remember what was happening in the morning. The memory came back later that day. I discussed it with some of my work friends, and their opinions ranged from normal to paranormal. I was a little on the fence on which it was, but I was scared to sleep for a while. A few weeks later, I was drifting off to sleep when I felt the presence again. This time, it was beside my bed. I was facing away from it and went stiff, hoping that it would go away. It took me a few minutes to get up the courage to flip around, and when I did, I caught a very clear view of it before it vanished. It was a dark shape, and it almost resembled a human, but wasn't solid enough in shape. Didn't sleep well the rest of the night. I told my best friend about it, and that's when I learned what it was. Shades feed off your energy. They are drawn to negative emotions like stress and anxiety, which mine were very high at the time. She's a witch and brought me a bottle that contained Himalayan sea salt, rose petals, and a few other things. I only saw it once after that, I was trying to sleep but still very awake. I opened my eyes and saw it as clear as the other time before it vanished again. I hadn't felt its presence, and I believe it was my friend's concoction that kept it away. It's been around a year since that happened, so I think I actually got rid of it. Halloween is not easy for sensitives. I am a sensitive. I have seen and experienced the paranormal since I was little. My experiences range from surprising to scary, and they can happen anytime. I don't control it. The one thing I can count on, though, is something almost always happens to me around Halloween. I'm sure most people know that Halloween is the time when the veil between the worlds is the thinnest. It's not just that day. Sometimes as much as 2 weeks before and after Halloween, the veil is thin enough to severely affect sensitives. I have a few sensitive friends, and I know that some can even feel the veil thinning. Responses to the veil range depending on sensitivity. I've experienced lucid dreaming, vivid dreams, and severe anxiety. I do have anxiety, which I have medication for. Last Halloween, I had a panic attack come out of nowhere. I was shaking and could hardly breathe for no reason. I barely made it back to the car. I know that it was because of the veil. I don't usually have those attacks since starting my medicine, and I went back to the same mall a few months later and experienced no anxiety. I don't remember everything that happened on Halloween, so the experiences I do remember are usually among the scariest. I will start with the ones that happened the longest time ago. That Halloween, I had a few things happen to me, as expected. I can't remember them since they didn't really stand out. This experience was more creepy than scary. It was either Halloween night or just after. I couldn't sleep, so I was playing on my phone in the dark. I decided it was time to make myself sleep, so I went to put my phone down. When I did, I saw a dark, cat-sized shadow jump at my face. I jerked back, thinking my black cat had jumped from the nightstand to my bed. I never felt her land on the bed. I looked around for her just to realize that she was asleep on the other side of my bed. She would have had to climb over to lay there from that angle. It took me a while to sleep that night. This next one is my sister's experience. It happened either that same year or a little after that. She isn't as sensitive as I am, so her experiences are fewer, but they do stand out more. She was riding home with her boyfriend from the Halloween gathering that they had gone to. It was dark, of course. And then he pulled into the driveway to our house. He said the lights landed on something large, running on all fours. It was humanoid-shaped. He didn't see it. She told me about it. I told her it was fine, and she was inside, and I told her not to go outside again that night. Last Halloween was my most active one. It was a week or so before, and I had my panic attack. I also had several lucid dreams, and one very vivid dream that I still cannot convince myself it was just a dream. I also saw much more than ghosts. I have a job that requires me to go to customers' houses, try to make contact with them. That was what I was doing when 2 of these incidents occurred. I can't remember if they happened on the same night or not. It was just before Halloween, though. I was on a dimly lit back road in my small town. In my town, most of the back roads are dark, so I was lucky to have some extra light. I rounded a curve and my light lit up something standing on the other side of a fence. It was a gray mass that seemed almost 2-dimensional. The best way to describe it would be almost like the reports of Bigfoot, honestly. It was taller than a human, but shaped similarly. It wasn't Bigfoot, though, had no definition to it. I believe it belonged to a different place. I drove faster after seeing it, and I took a different road back. The next thing I saw was very similar to the previous creature, except it flew. I was in my own car. But the way the windshield slants, I only saw it for a moment. It was almost like a pterodactyl, but was gray and had no definition like the other one. I describe it that way for lack of a better way. Obviously, I don't think that we have extinct flying dinosaurs in my small town of Tennessee. These two creatures sound absurd, I know, and even I would have pretty much as hard of a time as probably you believing somebody when they describe them. But my last experience of that Halloween was the most terrifying experience I've had around Halloween in general. I was pulling into my driveway at night after getting off work. It was late, and everyone else would have gone to bed by then. It was the first time I had seen something like it, and hopefully the last. I understand why my sister was freaked out that time. A large humanoid creature on all fours was running through the yard. It was only a few seconds that I had seen it, but it was close, and it was big, maybe twice the size of our chocolate lab. Once we passed each other, I didn't see it again. Needless to say, I made a mad dash into the house and wouldn't let the dogs out to use the bathroom. Car repeatedly shaken in the mountains. Let me preface this, that while until now I believe that there are energies that we don't yet understand, I wasn't ready to believe in spirits. Until now. Last weekend I decided to drive up to this nice area in northern Catalonia that I visited previously. I did some hiking to avoid paying for a campground. I decided to drive up the mountain about 15 minutes up from the nearest town to a calm pasture on top of the mountain, which I visited before. It was only 9 p.m. I was clear-minded and still quite awake, but I tilt my driver's seat back and close my eyes. Within about a minute, something big hits the rocks next to my car, coming from the rear right side opposite of me. I think, okay, I just imagined that. Closed my eyes again. About a minute later, the same exact thing. Boom! The car rocks from the side and I'm freaked. I don't know, there's a lot of big cows up there, so I thought it must be a cow. Could be a person, but the force was large, and despite that, it's quite a remote place in the pre-Pyrenees where nobody goes at night. So I get out to investigate, flashlight in hand. I walk all around the car, shining the light into the distance. Nothing. This was in a pasture where I could see for about 100-150 meters in every direction. See the video link below. So no way something could have hit the car and then run and hid. I get back to the car to think what to do. Within about 5 seconds, another hit and the car rocks. That's 3 times now. Having known there was no one or anything around, I knew the only option was that it was a spirit. I get out, and after looking around the car again, I speak out loud, saying, "Look, I just want to sleep here for the night. Then I'll be gone. Please, just let me sleep here." I get back in the car, and within 5 to 10 seconds, again a 4th big hit, and the car rocks side to side. I knew that it was time to leave. So I back the car up, turn around, start taking off back down the mountain. I immediately felt the thing was in the car with me, making sure that I left. I even turned my head around to look in the back, absolutely sure I would see something. I rolled down the windows and yelled, "Please just go, let me be, I'm leaving, all right?" After about 3 minutes of driving, I felt like it had left. I get down the mountains to the town, park the car, and call a close friend. We spoke for an hour and a half until she could calm me down. She had chills going down her spine as she knows me well and knows that what I explained was real. My life changed that night. This story is simply titled Story. I was actually just thinking about it the other day, going over the details in my mind. I live in a studio apartment and literally nowhere to hide, and everything's in view. Bathroom is a small separate room inside with a door. My father was visiting. Sometimes he smoked cigarettes on the porch or in the bathroom. He had just walked in from smoking a cigarette on the porch, sat down for a few minutes. Then he got up and walked into the bathroom. Paused the TV and wanted to show him something. Waited about 5 minutes, then figured he was probably just smoking again, and I walked over to the door, opened it, just a little, to tell him to hurry up if he was just smoking. He wasn't there. There was no smoke. I opened the door and he was nowhere in sight, not behind the door, and the window's too small to fit through. I recently had read a story of a woman disappearing on a trail or something. I thought of that or time slips and was just like, there's no way he just vanished. That took about 5 seconds. Then it took a second to rush to my front door to see if maybe I missed him walk out to the porch somehow, and I yelled, "Dad!" No answer. At that point, got an adrenaline and anxiety type of a feeling and almost started to panic. I was like, where could he possibly be? I rushed over to the bathroom a second later to check for clues, and when I opened the door, a big cloud of smoke came out. There he was, sitting on the toilet smoking. I was like, where were you? He swore he never moved. He was on his phone while smoking on the toilet. The smoke was weird because there wasn't smoke in there when I checked like 10 seconds prior. Something to note, if I didn't mention it in my post, is that I have total aphantasia. I have no visual imagination. So it is possible for me to hallucinate or just have imagined it. Or rather, isn't. I don't think about it often, but every now and then I think about that and it just boggles my mind. Is it the only paranormal thing that I've ever experienced, I wonder? What the hell did I see at work? For background, I work in a nursing home with hospice patients, so I'm surrounded by death all the time. And I've definitely seen my fair share of weird paranormal things in the home. But this one is really freaking me out. Once a week I work overnight shifts. It's a pretty boring shift, just doing checks. Checks on specific patients, usually every hour, meds and changing as needed. Last night, my coworker and I were doing our rounds and checking on patients while they sleep. We got to one lady's room and I went into just, to check on her. I saw her silhouette in bed and we could see her breathing, which is basically all we're checking for. So we went on with our shift. An hour passes and we go to check on her again, but she isn't anywhere in the room. We start freaking out because we have no idea where she is and none of the doors have been triggered. So she had to be in the building. After about a half hour of freaking out, we find out the lady wasn't even there in the first place. They had forgotten to tell us that she had been taken to the hospital the day before. She had not been in the building for quite a while. So that was a relief to us, but then what the hell did I see breathing and laying in her bed? My coworker also saw this, so I know it's not just me. She's been in that room for the entirety of me working there. I don't know if anybody passed away in that room before her. Like I said before, I definitely see her and hear a lot of shit working in hospice. But this gives me chills because I swear on my life I saw her breathing in that bed. Crazy stuff. I saw a creature in a huge black forest in France. I want to share with you an encounter I made in September 2012 in a French wood by the neighborhood, oh boy, I'm not good at French, Baug''E. I'm going for it. In the neighborhood of Baug'E'Enanjou. Forgive me. In the French wood in the neighborhood of Baug'Enanjou. Sounds Asian. I'm doing this wrong. Oh no, there's more French in this. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm reading it anyway. I'm not sure the name of the forest. It could be Le Bois d'Anjou or La Forêt de Monial de Chandales. Now it sounds Mexican or Spanish. Oh no. Anyway, I'm still haunted by this creepy encounter. I just can't accept being unable to know what was that scary creature. So I was 20, and I was in an old small truck with an older friend who was 55. They were the driver. I was sitting on the passenger place at the right of the truck. The truck was very old, and I remember we couldn't go faster than 30 or 40 kilometers an hour. We were driving since Le Havre in Normandy, and we took only the very small road in order to stop anywhere that we wanted to visit the old church, or the abandoned house, the German fortification, etc. We were expecting to arrive at our destination, a troglodyte house that belonged to a friend of mine, around 3 a.m. in the morning. But we were late, and it was 3 a.m. when we enter a huge dark forest in the night. We were driving slowly in the woods on a straight, small road. The old lights of the truck were some kind of blinking yellow. At a point, I saw some very black humanoid outline on the left side of the road. It was a very clear outline because it was in the light of our truck. Otherwise, I wouldn't have even seen it. The creature was on 2 legs like a biped, no tails. At first I could see, I really couldn't see any arms as we were slowly approaching it. But then I saw it turning its head in our direction. We were silent in the truck, saying no words. My friend was just driving and I was wondering if I was hallucinating. We slowly drive in its direction, and it started to cross the road as it was staring at us. It has pretty huge, big yellow eyes, like an owl. It was around 1.5 meters in height. We almost were at its level, and I remember fearing that it opened my truck door and would grab me. I was really in fear. I saw its arms swinging along its thin, black, hairy body. It has hair on all of its body. I saw it at its outline as we were approaching it. It arrived on the other side of the road and suddenly stops and turns in our direction, still staring at us. A few seconds later, we passed it, and I didn't move my head, just looking at the right rearview mirror, seeing that it was staring at our truck, letting us drive away from it. My friend and I didn't say a word, and half an hour later we drive out of the dark woods and I say something like, "Well, weird things in the woods, right?" And my friend was suddenly extremely nervous, saying, "Yeah, did you see that? What the fuck was that?" We talked about it, and we saw the same thing, me and him. He thought he was hallucinating because we were very tired, but nope, we saw that thing in the wood. Today he's 60, I'm in my 30s. We both still are haunted by this thing. We talk about it every time we meet each other. He's particularly marked by the intelligence in its big yellow eyes. I know this could be explained, but to be honest, I'm an urbexer since 2004, and I visit the catacombs of Paris every 2 months. But I never feared anything. But this thing scares me. Really. But anyway, one day I found a picture on the internet. Sadly, I didn't find the artist. There was no context, but it looks like a lot like what I saw, except for the eyes. The creature I saw had very big, round, yellow eyes. I'm so sorry, author. I'm the opposite of being able to speak French. I saw a shadow jumping from a haunted cliff. In summer of 2007 or 2008, don't quite well remember, I went with my best friend on the top of a cliff where this old German pillbox from 1942 was found. We went there because we wanted to visit this pillbox. We were both very keen on finding old German bullets. The pillbow was fun, but the place was well known and there were nothing historical for us to find. We visited the place enjoying the view, and I noticed an old forgotten trench nearby the pillbox. It was full of farming trash and bramble bushes. At this time I was thrilled because it seemed that nobody had come in that trench since, perhaps maybe the 50s. So my best friend and I decided to explore this trench full of thorn. We made our way inside, crawling in the bush. No. We found cool historical stuff between the farmer's trash. Things like bullets, buttons from uniforms, even a regular comb and toothbrush that belonged to a German soldier. We were very thrilled and we kept on crawling in that trench. A few hours later, I was under a huge and dense bush in the trench and there was a hole in the ground. I tried to fall inside that hole and managed to get in a small bunker. This place was awesome. World War II painting on the wall, dust, dirt, stuff everywhere. My friend came and we decided to come back in the night because we didn't have our light with us. My friend was about to be engaged with a girl that he wanted her to come and search relics with us. So we went to our town half an hour from there, picked up our friend and our tools and lights. We came back at the cliff, climbed the first German pillbox. As soon as we were at the top of the cliff, it was nighttime. We enjoyed the evening searching for more old relics from the war. My friend told me that we needed a shovel to take away the dirt. He said that he will go to the nearby farm looking for some kind of tool to quote-unquote borrow. He went outside and a few moments later I asked our friend if she wanted to go outside the bunker. We went out and I started to light a pipe to smoke. Yeah, my friend and I smoked the pipe. French stuff. Later, she needed some privacy, so I went to the edge of the cliff to smoke, looking at the reeds in the little valley where we come from. The moon was bright and there was a lot of wind. I saw someone in the valley wandering alone. Thought it was my best friend, but that was pretty much nonsense as the local farm was on the other side. Moreover, I was worried, because even if the moon was bright, it was night, and we were near by a 60-meter cliff. He hadn't lit his headlight. I looked in his direction, smoking my pipe nervously, and I saw him slowly walking the direction of the cliff. I started to ask myself if I was hallucinating. I just stared his direction, not being really sure if what I saw was real. A few seconds later, the shadow falls from the cliff. I was fixed. And at this second, my best friend came from behind me showing an old road sign that we could use as a shovel. I understood that he was not the shadow that I saw. I thought that when I had seen the dry reeds in the wind waving toward the edge of the cliff, maybe, but we went back to the bunker, searching the dust and rust on the ground, shoveling the dirt outside of it. Around 2 a.m., we went outside to smoke and rest. I lay down in the grass near the cliff's edge. I was in the front, my best friend laying just a little bit behind me, and our friend was behind him. My best friend couldn't see her. We were quiet and had a relaxing time. My best friend suddenly sat on the grass and called his girlfriend. "Hey, do not go this way. Come on, stop right here. There's the void over there." I turned in his direction and I saw them both, and I looked at him like, "What the fuck, bro?" He said, "Come on, Clesius. They just fell from the cliff." Then the girl replied from behind him, "No, I'm right here behind you." He understood that what he saw was not real. During 15 minutes, we sat in the dark. The wind was blowing. Then I said that I was tired and that I would kind of enjoy to go back home. Our friend was tired too, so we went back in the car in the valley and we were silent. When my friend started his car and started to drive, I felt him released, and he said, "Clesius, you know me, I fear nothing, but up there, no, I won't go back here, it's too creepy." I said what I saw, that it was a very strange atmosphere up there. Promised myself I would never go back there. The story could end now, but in 2016, I made a movie about that cliff. My best friend passed away in 2012, and I thought it could be a good tribute to his memory. So I went with a friend of mine up there to make some rush. It was about noon when we decided to go back to our car in the valley. Our car was parked nearby a Pebble Beach. Pebble, maybe? We were about to leave when I met some fine guy who was a local historian. I asked him if it would be okay to be interviewed for my movie, and he said okay. As I was asking him about the local history during the interview, he told us about a World War II British operation at this right place. And he mentioned a British soldier who during a raid tried to go to a landing ship on the beach. He had some German troopers behind him, and to win some time, he ran nearby the cliff. As the German were closer and closer, he thought he could reach the beach by jumping from the cliff, but it was night and snowy. He made a mistake, probably thinking that the cliff was shorter, and the British soldier jumped from the cliff. He was later found in the morning, broke dead in the rocks. I made the link with that creepy night that I had made with my best friend. It was the same place. This is a trailer of the movie The Pillbox, and the cliff are at point 15. The operation name is Biting. Many moons ago, I used to be in the U.S. Navy, stationed in Gaeta, Italy, assigned to the 6th Fleet flagship. Being a single sailor, I lived off the ship with a few other roommates in a large 2-bedroom apartment. I had a room to myself, 2 guys shared a room, both straight, and 1 guy, a total freeloader named Justin, slept on the couch. We had 1 other roommate, a poltergeist that we would call Calvin. Calvin roamed all of the apartments in the building, and everybody had seen or experienced something odd. It wasn't uncommon to hear dishes rattling in the kitchen, a door slamming, footsteps, etc. But a few things happened that were out of the ordinary. One weekend morning, I was sleeping after getting off of duty. I had a mid-watch the night before, when the dishes in the kitchen started to rattle. All of my other roommates were out. I ignored it and tried to go back to sleep because I didn't want to go back to the ship. If I was on the ship, then someone would have come up with something that they wanted me to do. It was just normal activity in that apartment. But just as I was falling back to sleep, someone walked across my bed. I say someone because I could feel the mattress sink down with every step. Half asleep, I told Calvin that I was tired, asked him if he'd come give me a break. Dead silence for the rest of the day. There were Brits who worked in Gaeta, some of the local bars where the sailors hung out. One of them would come over to our place and clean it for us while we were gone. One day she was cleaning the windows and needed to get some clean water. When she came back to the window, a spot that she had recently cleaned, the glass was steamed over, like somebody had been breathing on it. Written on the glass in that spot was the word Calvin. She left and wouldn't come back to the apartment unless somebody else was there. Edit. I remember coming back from that deployment to find a water bucket and some rags near the window and thought it was odd. It was several days later when I talked to my friend and found out why they were there. She didn't waste any time getting out of that apartment. While Justin, the couch potato, would frequently wake everyone up by screaming profanities because Calvin was messing with him, one night after having the blankets pulled off of him and getting thrown onto the floor, Justin stood up and yelled something like, "You want a piece of me, motherfucker? Bring it." He had a peace symbol tattooed on his chest, and the next morning there was an X scratched across it. It was several months before Justin came back to the apartment, and he wouldn't stay by himself. That was the only quote-unquote violent thing that Calvin ever did. For the most part, it was just harmless pranks. Bill, one of my roommates, me and him were sitting in the living room. I forget what we were talking about. He was sitting on a couch that was parallel to the hallway, but because he was looking at me, the main door to the apartment at the end of the hall was in his peripheral vision. I was sitting in a chair with my back to the same hallway. Occasionally, Bill would look down the hall almost like he had a nervous tic. I asked him what was wrong. He said he kept seeing something out of the corner of his eye, but every time he turned to look, it was gone. I told him that the next time that he saw something to keep looking at me and just use his peripheral vision. A few minutes later, Bill turned pale. I could see him break out in a sweat even though I was several feet from him. He said that there was a woman with long hair at the end of the hall, in a long flowing gown or some sort of old dress, and that there was a light behind her so we couldn't make out her face. Fast forward to last year when I was talking to my wife, who's from Gaeta, about Calvin. She got an odd look on her face, called her mom to verify something that she remembered from her childhood. When she got off the phone, she told me about this medicine woman, I guess you could call her, that her mom used to take her to see when she was a child. This woman had the ability to cure someone just by touching you where you were hurt. Oddly enough, she lived in the bottom floor of the apartment building where Calvin called home. Haunted Doll's Ghost. This happened probably half a year ago, but I didn't have this account back then, or just didn't think to post it here. But I think it's worth sharing anyways. So, I am a 19-year-old male. I've been living in a small apartment for a while now alone. I collect second-hand porcelain and clown dolls. There's only one of them that's been showing me peculiar acts. She is a porcelain doll, my only non-clown doll. I bought her since she looked almost sad. I don't know how to explain that. I take a lot of good care of my dolls. I clean them and keep them in a showcase. The first weird thing that happened was that she had moved. She usually is facing forward, but she had turned towards my apartment's door, which was on her right. Another weird thing that she has done is that her eyes have been following me. I thought at first that I probably didn't see correctly and also that myself had moved the doll without realizing it. But I think my mind changed after the ghost encounter. I was drawing and watching videos on my laptop. That's when I noticed something weird on my left near my bed in the showcase. There's a curtain that separates my bed and the showcase and the bookcases that doesn't hide my bedroom all the way. I live in a one-bedroom apartment, so my bedroom and living room is the same room. Curtain brings some privacy. So anyway, I turned my head to look as I convinced myself that there wasn't anything creepy happening. Instead, I saw a small, probably around 6 or 8-year-old girl. She had long, wavy, dark blonde, almost white hair and a long, dark dress that looked old. I didn't see clearly since I was so surprised and kind of scared, to be honest. But the ghost was vivid. I could see half of her dress since it was only peeking, but I could see her feet and head from behind the curtain. I remember she had a scared and unsure look on her face, but when I tried to look again, she was already gone. I wasn't that scared after it, just cautious and shocked that I saw what I saw. I've been taking good care of the doll, which I know was the ghost's doll. I sense a connection between them, and none of my other dolls have shown any paranormality. I haven't seen her since. I hope she's okay, either roaming around here or resting finally, I don't know. Ask Reddit. One of the popular means of transportation in my city is the subway, but the stations are quite old, so many of them don't have escalators or elevators. Because of this, it happens unusually often that I get to help old people with their groceries or parents with their strollers climb up and down the stairs. One of these times I was helping a lady carry her stroller down to the train platform. There was this clerk cleaning the platform with one of those big sweeper things that you push around. The slow, heavy things, you know. He was short and about 60 years old with hair missing from the top of his head and big glasses on. After I helped the lady, I leaned against the wall and started scrolling through my phone. The man reaches my position on the platform, and from where he was, he says, "Thank you for helping the woman." I raised my head from my phone. We both smile. Then he says, "Eres un angel." You're an angel. And I smile, not really knowing what to say. Kind of embarrassed, I look back at my phone and immediately get the idea to go thank him and tell him that he said, made me feel very good. However, he's nowhere to be found, nor the machine that he was operating. The doors where the subway clerks store their equipment are at the end of the platform. We were nowhere close to them, or in the middle, so I have no idea where he could have gone. There's no way more than 3 to 4 seconds passed between our exchange and me looking back up. I haven't told anyone this story because it's kind of self-centered and hard to believe. People can dismiss it and say that I was just not paying attention, but there was legitimately nowhere for him to have gone within a second like that, and without a sound. The Little Girl Who Didn't Exist. Earlier today, I went to brunch at a friend's house. After I'd been there for about an hour, a young couple I'd never met arrived. I was standing in the kitchen with a direct and clear view of the front door. If I were to walk straight from where I was standing, I'd walk right out in the front door. I was only about 10 feet away from them. When they walked in, I saw a man, a pregnant woman, and a small girl child who looked to be about 2 to 3 years old. The little girl looked shy, and she was holding a stuffed animal in her hand. The two adults came into the kitchen where I was standing, and we introduced ourselves. The wife and I share the same first name. Not sure if this matters at all, but thought I'd share since her name is not one that's super common, but also not super rare either. They were lovely people. We had a great conversation. After introductions, we all grabbed seats in the open dining room/living room. I didn't see the little girl anywhere, but I assumed she was off playing with one of the cats in the house. The wife mentioned that she was 36 weeks pregnant, expecting their first child to be here any day now. At that time, I whispered to my boyfriend who was sitting next to me, asking where the little girl went. He was confused as fuck. I then discreetly mentioned to my friend that I thought I saw them come in with a little girl. He was also confused as fuck and said that there was no little girl there and he had no idea what I was talking about. I do not do drugs, not even smoke pot. I am prescribed Adderall for narcolepsy, but I take it as prescribed. I've never experienced seeing or hearing anything like this before. At least not to my knowledge, I guess. I had a mimosa with brunch, but was far from being drunk, not even slightly. I do consider myself extremely spiritual, though. Another story titled simply Story. So the part about seeing the man in my house was really skimmed over. That was a pretty mental story. I'm not sure if this meets the type of thing you talk about on your podcast or if my original post is more relevant. But here's my ghost story anyway. I'm from the UK, so this place in my parents' house is just outside of London. When I was 7, we moved into this house that was pretty old and pretty big. I always slept in the room next to my parents, but when I got to 13, I was allowed to move into a room on the other side of the house. My mom decorated it all beautifully for me and had put an armchair in the corner. One night not long after moving into the room, I woke up to see a man sitting on the chair in my bedroom. He was sitting there smiling at me. He had no hair and looked a bit like a skeleton to me. I screamed and ran across the house to my mom's room to tell her that there was a man in my bedroom. We were both really scared to go in there because of this intruder, so we tried to convince the dogs to go in. We knew if somebody was in there, they would bark, which would then confirm it. The dogs totally refused to go into the room. After some time, me and my mom decided to go in there armed with a golf club. When we got in, my notice board was on the floor and so was my lamp. No one was in there at all, and there were no open windows or signs of entry or exit. Anyway, a few years later, we had my mom's friend move in with us. She was into ghosts and spirits, and took me to this medium event. I never told her about the man in my room. At the event, I was paired up with a medium who said to me, "There's a man in here to see you. You don't know him, but he says he's so sorry for having scared you." This freaked me out so much that I told my mom, who then came clean to me, that the house was for sale because the previous owner had died of cancer. Not only he had died of cancer, but he had died in none other than my bedroom. Rural Tennessee farmhouse. A haunting incident from my childhood. I often forget about this experience, as I only have vague memories of my childhood. But when I do remember, it still scrambles my brain and gives me the chills. I've only told a few people, and have a really hard time believing it myself. Until recently that I've been reading accounts here and talking to people about their experiences. I'm convinced that I'm not misremembering and that this did in fact happen and is still unexplainable. Here goes. When I was 7 or 8, I had a best friend. We spent all of our free time playing together at her home, a big old farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere in Tennessee. There was a small room upstairs that held all of our, animal toys, you could say. We would spend hours and hours battling against each other with our armies and creating stories that would be played out for weeks on end. This room was mostly just storage for boxes and spare furniture. There was a small wooden chair in the corner of the room that had been there for years. As long as we had played in that room, that chair was there in that corner. One day, I was playing with them in the room. They were sitting in the front wooden chair with her back to it, and I was sitting in front of her where I could see the chair over her shoulder. We both immersed in our game. When I looked up, I see a little boy. A little boy with large, thick, square glasses and dressed in a very dapper, vintage outfit. He was just sitting in the chair looking at us. For some reason, I wasn't scared at all. I simply asked her, "Who's that boy in the chair behind you?" She, of course, thought I was trying to prank her, told me to stop. I asked her again, "Who is that?" They finally turn around and see the little boy. She immediately panics and jumps up, causing me to panic as well. We both bolted out of the room and went downstairs. We were so young that we couldn't even comprehend what had just happened. We just accepted it and moved on. However, we never went back in that room. From then on, we couldn't even walk by the room without an immense feeling of dread. Neither of us would go inside. We never played with our Schleich animals again because we were too scared to retrieve them from the room. Nobody believed us when we told the adults about the little boy. I think this caused her and I to grow up believing that our minds created this experience due to an overactive imagination. We had to convince ourselves that it was just a trick of the mind in order to sleep at night. I've never experienced anything else that was this corporeal. Her and I both still vividly remember the image of the boy in the chair. I remember his glasses, his blonde hair, his outfit, and even the color of the wall behind him. I know we both saw the same thing, and I know that it was real. I have no explanation except that this little ghost boy probably just wanted to play with us. Unsettling Night. My mom's mimicked voice. I wanted to share this spine-tingling experience that happened to me during my sophomore year of high school. It was around fall, and my then boyfriend and I were watching Ender's Game at my place. We were home alone because my mom was at the hospital, visiting my aunt on her way back from work. As we watched the movie, the sun had already set, and I suddenly heard what I thought was my mom opening the front door. Her footsteps, the dog's excitement, and her presumed trip to the garage for a smoke seemed like a typical evening routine. My boyfriend even noticed and said, "Your mom's home." To which I casually replied, "I know." Thought nothing more of it. However, time passed and she never came inside, so I decided to check on the garage. But the door was locked, which felt strange. I unlocked it, peered inside, only to find it shrouded in darkness. My unease growing, I proceeded to her room, but it was eerily empty. That's when I went outside and realized her car was gone from the driveway as well, as if it had disappeared into thin air. Puzzled and worried, I called my mom asking if she had come home and left again. Her response still haunts me to this day. "No, I'm just leaving the hospital now. Why? What's going on?" I shared what had happened with my boyfriend, and we were left bewildered. To this day, I can't explain exactly what occurred, but I know for sure that it wasn't my mom who entered the home that night. It's a chilling mystery that lingers in my memory. My story, a skeptic turned semi-believer. Backstory. My friend, for the sake of the story, I'm going to call him Fred, and his mother. I lived in their house for many years prior to me meeting him. I met him in 6th grade, and we're 35 now. He's still my best friend to this day. Both him and his mother swore up and down that his house was haunted. All through high school, we'd hang out at his house, and I never had an experience. He ended up going to college in Louisiana, but would visit on holidays. This experience happened in December of 2006. He was coming home from college for winter break. He brought a friend from college with him too, and we'll call him John. Experience. We decided to try to coax a reaction from this ghost, since nobody but him and his mom had been seeing anything. We were 18 and foolish, so we had a Ouija board. I know, but it was fun. And candles. We were sitting in his room after midnight, I'm sure, because his mom was already asleep. We were burning a candle in a thick glassed coaster designed for candles. We were playing with the Ouija board and the flame flickered a bit. But whatever, it was just a draft. Then the coaster popped clean in half, no shards, just but. My first thought is that this was just heat transfer and the coaster couldn't handle it. At least that's what I tell myself. The candle was not low, so 1, I don't see how it could have transferred that much heat, and 2, those are specifically designed for candles. I didn't have to imagine that the amount of heat it would take to cause this to happen would be far greater than that of anything a candle could emit. Sure, it was December, but we live in Texas, so it wasn't that cold. It definitely wasn't cold enough to cause such shock on the glass. Even with those 2 considerations, I'm still able to dismiss this as physics. However unfavorable the conditions for such a reaction were. Here's the part that sends chills down my body 17 years later. I had my laptop, 2006 HP, and I was searching how to perform a seance. When I got to the website and clicked the link for instructions, my laptop shut down immediately. The page didn't even load. I rebooted my laptop and noticed that the Wi-Fi button had been turned off. I pressed it and it lit up, but I still couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi. I had to go into the control panel, re-enable the Wi-Fi radio. It had been completely shut off. I was finally able to get connected again, so I reloaded the website and attempted to click the link. As soon as I clicked the link, the lights in his room dimmed as we heard footsteps run down the hall. We freaked the fuck out, and I'm still covered in goosebumps just typing this. John, who wasn't a big believer, immediately opened the door and went out into the dark living room, telling the ghost to show itself. We followed sheepishly and noticed that his mom was still in her room sleeping. There's no way she could have dimmed the lights, but even if she could, she couldn't have ran and made it back to her room and act asleep that quickly. Not to mention her room was out and to the right, but the footsteps clearly traveled down the left side of the hallway. I had experiences in that home afterward, but none nearly as terrifying as this one. Just mainly feelings and sounds. His mother moved a few years later, hasn't had any experiences since. I know this all sounds crazy, and objectively, I wouldn't believe it if I read it. All I can say is that the feelings I had that night were very real, and continue to spook me when I think of it today. His mother is basically my second mother. I trust her 10,000%. And told me other stories of experiences, but since I wasn't there, I don't want to share them, because I can't verify it. I do know that she would sleep with a knife under her pillow. Not that it would really help against a ghost, but probably provided some comfort. It makes her sound nutso, but... And if I know this is kind of rich coming from a random person on the internet, she's not by any means nutty. Like I said, I love her as a second mom and trust her just as much. That's the end of tonight's stories. Always a pleasure. See you later.